What's going on, guys? This is King Orange here, back again for another video. And here today, guys, I have decided to do a topic of interest based on the supposed rumor that the sequel trilogy is going to be remade, though at this point it's pretty much been debunked as sort of a rumor. I doubt it's true. But yeah, let's get into it. So I guess we'll kind of break this down into kind of three subcategories, I guess you could say. The first would be whether or not these rumors hold any degree of truth. The second would be should the sequel trilogy be remade? And then the third is what's kind of the best direction to go with Star Wars from here to kind of correct the error that the sequel trilogy sort of left for us. So, to answer the first one, do I think this is legitimate? And my simple answer for this is absolutely not. I mean, to do this would mean Disney would actually have to admit that they screwed up. And realistically, a company that big is just going to be way too prideful to do that. And on top of that, it's just, and this will kind of lead into my second point, whether or not they should, is, you know, for them, it's kind of like, what's the point in their minds? So, you know, as far as the probability goes, like I said, I don't think it's legitimate. In fact, like I said, the person making this post is mostly just someone that was crap posting on the sequel trilogy. So it's sort of like, it's a wishful thinking at best. Now, do I think the sequel trilogy should be remade? This is a complicated one for me because it's like, I'm very mixed on it. On one hand, it's like, ideally, like in a perfect world where, you know, like, all the foundations were there to try again, yes, absolutely. But then, by the same token, it's also one of those things where, is it honestly worth it nowadays? I mean, you're not gonna have the original actors if you do so. Like, say this is true. Let's just say that, you know, say it is true that they do remake it. You're not gonna have a lot of the original actors because Carrie Fisher is dead. Harrison Ford would only do it for like a buttload of money, and even then, it's questionable if he would do it. It's kind of like you still got Chewie, 3PO, and you know maybe Mark Hamill with Luke, but that's about it. You don't really have a lot of the OG cast. In that sense, you wouldn't know if Billy D. Weens would come back again. It's like there's a lot that, you know, there's a lot that would kind of be left out in a sense. And so that's kind of the first issue center with it. And the next is, and this is more just streamlined continuity, is, and this is especially why I doubt it'll just be deleted in a sense. Because it's just kind of like, the next problem you would run into is just how much it would confuse the internal continuity. And as much as I hate to say it, as much as it's a weird concept for me, it would probably, I mean, it would piss off sequel trilogy fans. I mean, I don't like the sequel trilogy. I have a lot of problems with it. I genuinely believe that they're bad as far as Star Wars sequels go, but there are people that do legitimately like them. And while I don't understand them, I do also have a basis of respect for them. So it's kind of like, it is one of those things to me where, is it worth potentially risking to piss them off in order to try to earn back the fans that, you know, disliked the sequel trilogy and despised it? Is that worth it? And especially since if you do that, you're putting a lot of burden on making sure that the new version is like miles better than the current sequel trilogy we have. Otherwise, it's just not going to be worth it in a sense. So you sort of have that problem. You have the continuity problem because a lot of stories do exist to connect with the sequels. So you also have that. And then it's just like, you have all those factors, and then you just have the sheer cost of it story-wise, the money that it took to make it, and it's just like, is it worth doing that? So, it's kind of one of those things where it's like I said, in a perfect world, yes, I would absolutely say remake them, try again, actually make something a lot more respectful to the source material in the lore and George Lucas's original vision. But in a realistic sense, trying to look at this from the only perspective that Disney cares about, I don't see them realistically doing it. Because I just think too much would be on the line if they did. And that's why I think they wouldn't risk it. I mean, and it's kind of, leading into my third point now, it's kind of like the thing they've been doing now is not really, they haven't been talking about the sequels at all. They've pretty much been ignoring them. And trying to branch out and focus on different eras. You have now the High Republic, Mandalorian Season 2, which will obviously take place like post-original trilogy. And so you have these different things that you can do. And here's the thing, I'm actually looking forward to Mandalorian Season 2. I'm curious about what the High Republic will look like. It may not be the Old Republic, may not be the nostalgia basis that I want, but it's still something that could potentially be interesting. So, I don't know. And that's kind of the next thing where it's like, should the sequels be remade as well? And tying in what's the best route to go for Star Wars, it's kind of like, if you did a remake of the sequel trilogy, it would take time and distract from other eras that could potentially be made through the same amount of time. So, again, whether or not Disney would view that as a good investment or not, again, I don't personally think it would be, as far as their perspective. Again, like I said, if this was a perfect world, I would absolutely say yes. So, what's the route then that they should go with the series? Well, for now, in my opinion, I think the best route they can go for right now is what they've been doing. They've been branching off to other eras, trying to focus on different things. Now, that being said, a lot of people say, the idea of they're just currently ignoring the sequels and that's a good thing. I don't think it is. Because at the end of the day, I mean, people don't really get this. Like it or not, if these movies are here to stay, if they're not going to go away, if they're not going to be deleted, then the next best thing you can do is, expand the material enough to try to make the movies work. I mean, more or less the prequels had a very similar treatment, and the solid truth is, the prequels didn't even need it as much as the sequels need that kind of treatment now. It's like the prequels, great ideas, great story, just had mixed execution. You have the sequel trilogy where it's very foundation, its very core is fundamentally flawed, and has details that would just fly over the casual viewer's mind. And so, having stuff like TV shows and mini movies and stuff like that to try to bridge that gap, in my opinion, would definitely try to help a lot. Like, imagine like a Star Wars The Clone Wars animation style anthology series about the events between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. Or a mini-series in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Like, stuff like that. Just stuff that would further expand the lore and the world. And, take what otherwise would have been pretty disastrous movies and find a way to make them work. But, I mean, that's my view on that. Now, as far as if they did ever remake the sequels, the best way that they could do it, honestly, is probably within their internal continuity with, say, the world between worlds or something like that. and just have it where something gets undone based on, like, you know, base it on the entire trilogy gets undone because it just represents a what if with Palpatine surviving Return of the Jedi. Because when you really think about it, when you think about it after the context of The Rise of Skywalker, the whole sequel trilogy pretty much only exists because Palpatine survived. So it's kind of one of those things where if you found a way to make his death final in Return of the Jedi, then it would, in theory at least, erase the sequel trilogy from the timeline, and you could still have the same characters. I mean, you would still have Poe and Finn and all them, maybe even Rey. Well, actually not Rey. Rey would actually never exist in this timeline, but it's like you would still have some of the sequel trilogy characters. It would just be a new set of stories with them. Which, you know, maybe down the road I actually wouldn't mind a concept like that, but time travel is a very, like, slippery slope, so whether or not that would be even worth it, and whether or not that would fix things as much as just screw things up worse, remains to be determined. But as far as my opinion's concerned, do I think it's likely? No. Do I think it should be done? In a perfect world, yes, but realistically, I think it would probably do more harm than good. And the best route to go from here is just confront the core of what is wrong with the sequel trilogy. Because even taking things to these other eras, if you don't learn from the history, you're going to repeat it. Disney's going to repeat the same mistakes again if they don't confront head on why they failed. They failed due to a lack of planning and a lack of world building, a lack of establishing things. So, I mean, in my opinion, if they can take that with the other eras and actually help the world building with that, and then actually world build the sequel trilogy to make it at least a tolerable era, it doesn't have to be great, but make it tolerable. Make it at least somewhat respectable to the legacy of the originals. That way, it can at least be seen for what it was originally sort of designed for, which was just sort of a retelling of the original trilogy. Basically just the original trilogy with a new coat of paint. And so at least it can be one of those things where it's just a foothold in history that just, you know, it happened. It's nothing big, it's nothing crazy, but it's there. But that's just my opinion on the matter. I apologize if this video is not well organized. I mostly just rambled for this. But overall, I generally do think that if the sequel trilogy does, I mean, I'm not gonna complain if it does get remade. If it's actually done well, because it's like I said before, it's based on the burden on if it does well. Like, if they remake it and just end up making it around the same quality or make it even worse, well then, you didn't do much good. So, in fact, in my opinion, really the best way you could really remake it if they were going to, in my opinion, the only way they really should, is if you're trying to take the original vision of George Lucas. Look, you don't have to always like the basis of what Lucas did, especially in the case with the Star Wars prequels. I get it. I get if you don't personally like that. I get if you think a lot of it could have been executed much better. I get that. Believe me. I'm pretty much in the same boat for a lot of that. But at the end of the day, no one is going to know Star Wars better than the man who created it. And so even if the sequel trilogy under Lucas's vision didn't work, or at least didn't work well, I mean, at least it would have had that respectful send-off, that basis on the true goodbye letter of George Lucas to what he's clearly displayed is his baby. So, I mean, you would have that, and then at least it would add something to the world that would be interesting. It wouldn't just be this retread or this lack of planning. It would actually have this interesting setup. But I don't know. That's just my opinion on the matter. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I apologize for this being very unorganized. I kind of just, for all intents and purposes, there wasn't much for me to say that other YouTubers haven't already covered. So I just figured just to make it an honest chat of my thoughts rather than, you know, like a full-on professional commentary. So, yeah. So, at the end of the day, if it does, I'll be curious to see what happens, but more than likely, they're probably just going to try something new, different eras, different kind of story, and if they do that, I'll be interested to see what happens as well. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing that I've realized at the end of the day is that Star Wars has always had highs and lows within its quality. I mean, even the EU, as much as I love it to death, there are some stories clearly better than others. For example, stuff related to the Yuuzhan Vong was way better than the Dark Empire trilogy. Just saying. But it's like, so at the end of the day, it's like even Legends had, or the classic expanded universe, that's what I like calling it, the classic EU. Even that had its fair share of mistakes and errors, and yeah, obviously it's not carried out to the same scale that the sequel trilogy is, but still, it exists. And at the end of the day, with things like Clone Wars Season 7, The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, and even The Rise of Skywalker to a lesser extent, because, you know, I think it's all putting together a step in the right direction. Like I said, even The Rise of Skywalker, as much as it's not really a good movie, I mean, most people know this, most people know it's not that good, but I mean, at least it tried to heal some of the damage that The Last Jedi caused. And while it did, yes, leave a lot of holes within its own damage, and the ending was not really satisfying at all, at least it tried. But I think when factoring that in, but especially factoring in The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, Clone Wars Season 7, and now some of these comics centered with the High Republic, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential still that Star Wars has left. And personally, I mean, if anything, if they're going to make something related to the sequels or post-Return of the Jedi, why not just make a new story set like hundreds of years after the events of the sequels? Do something completely new. Do something nice and adventurous that's, you know, doesn't connect with the OG characters or the OG factions. Just try something completely new. But that's just my opinion on the matter. Let me know what you guys think below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe, and potentially leave a comment. And heck, even if you didn't enjoy my video, post a comment. See, you know, just write a comment, let me know what I did well and what I can improve on. Feedback like that always helps the channel grow. Also, I am thinking about, I recently started up a Patreon. I'm trying to figure out how to get all that set up. When I do, I'm probably going to open that to try to get some donations in. Obviously, I'm not going to poach for donations. I'm not going to try to go that route. But, you know, given everything going on, and, you know, trying to increase the rate of my YouTube videos, of course, donating money can kind of help me with my rate, so that'd be greatly appreciated if you're able to do that. If not, of course, no big deal. But I hope to see you guys again in the next video, and something I've been thinking about, and I want you to post in the comments if you want me to do this or not, is I'm considering to do a weekly Q&A. So, if you think that's something I should do, please write in the comments if you think I should do that or not. So, that's up to you guys. Until then, I will see you all in the next video. This is King Orange, and I'll see you next time. Peace.